Welcome to the show, Matt. Looking forward to chatting football with you and going through your experiences so far. And I just wanted to start off with, we just had a bit of a pre-chat coming online here, and the Werribee Tigers are having a fantastic season. Talk to me a little bit about the experience this year and the feeling around the club heading into a big qualifying final on Saturday.
Yeah, well, firstly, Jock, thanks very much for having me on. It's a pleasure to come on and have a chat. No, it's very much 1 week at a time at Werribee. Sticking to the processes of what we've been doing all year. I think we've built a really great base and a really great routine around the club. Coming in and previewing each team on their merits, and then getting stuck into training and previewing the game and reviewing the game from the week before, and not getting too far ahead of ourselves. Finals is obviously an exciting time of year to be a part of, but at the end of the day, it's just another game, and you can't progress forward until you tick the next one off. So that's what the vibe's like down at Werribee, but everybody around the club's excited to get stuck into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was making a few notes as you were just answering that question there. And you obviously got a huge focus on a weekly game. Is that driven by Mickey Barlow at the top there, or who's really driving that? Some of the words come out of your mouth just then where, processes, routine, one game at a time. Is that coming from the top and filtering through the group, or is it more player driven, or how's that sitting with your club?
Oh, I think probably the biggest thing about Werribee this year is that it's just been a whole club mentality. Mick's obviously driving the standards from a head coach point of view, but it's just been a real great culture to be a part of, with everybody kind of jumping on board and everyone understanding their role, whether that be staff, volunteers, players. Everyone just contributes in their own specific way, and I think that's what's made our group so great to be a part of this year, and has ultimately resulted in the success that we've had so far. But we continue to talk about each week. Let's let's not change what we've done, because it's got us this far. But there's still a lot more that we need to keep doing in order to want and get the success that we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for listeners who don't know, we did a little work together last year in the Falcons program, and I'm excited to talk to you about your role here. You made a big step up to VFL level as development coach there, and talk to me about some of the things you do as a development coach that you think is integral to doing the development coach role well. I have sort of chatted on this podcast before about sometimes a tricky position, and I'm in a similar position at the Falcons 18s, but trying to find your spot to coach, I guess, because you got the head coach, you got the line coach, and then you got the development coaches. How do you sort of attack that during the week? And even maybe talk a little bit about game day as well, how that sits for you.
Yeah, during the week, it's very much all hands on deck from everyone involved. We have a period of training that would be no different to most clubs out there, where we have a portion that is pre-training craft. So that's very much development coach led, out there on the track, footies in hands, working on the basic fundamentals with the players, whether that be goal kicking, clean hands, kicking skills, just that real time to hone in on their craft. From my perspective, it was a great opportunity for me to start in that role, given I'm only 24 and haven't had that exposure too much in a coaching perspective. But it's something that I've probably got into really quickly this year, and found my feet really quickly at the start of the year. And I guess my role has probably been a development coach and a little bit more. So when we talk about game day, each line coach at Werribee is each development coach at Werribee is attached to a line. So I've been attached to the forward line to work with Nick Daffy, who's the assistant coach attached to the forwards. And we've kind of worked in tandem in almost a co-coaching perspective. He's very much around the specifics and talking to the players on game day, but I have a role in terms of doing all the vision and the analysis from a line coaching perspective. And then, no different to what any other assistant coach would do, individual conversations with players, individual edits, and then have a focus on a game day of just analysing the game and picking up extra things that coaches may miss, which is been really great experience.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really good role, but it sometimes is challenging to find your spot as a development coach. And I think there's some really good tips about that pre-training skills. Because the reality is a lot of coaches who start as development coaches obviously sort of new to the system and don't know quite how it all operates. So I think if you are looking to run into a development coach, for those listening, that there's I think that pre-training is a really good one, I think, isn't it? About get your skills in and sort of hone your craft as a coach even and work with players. And then you've done really well with adding that sort of analytics and video analysis and feedback that way.
Yeah, you're spot on. And I mean, when we get into training, it's not like as development coaches, there's three of us. It's not like we're then not used throughout trainings. We're always involved in the drills that are part of the main session. But it's a great opportunity as a development coach to learn drills as well and come kind of packed with an arsenal of drills that you can take wherever you go. And they might be the simplest of drills that people think are too basic to have to use at an elite level or a semi-professional level like VFL. But quite often they're the ones that are most important just to be able to enhance players' basic fundamental skills. And we always find that as soon as we add a competitive aspect to those basic fundamental drills, it really gets the players involved even more. So I think that's a great tip for any coaches out there that are wanting to continue to enhance their training sessions. Just keep it competitive where you can, even with the simplest of drills.
I think keeping competitive spot on. I think that's it's well, I think it's an absolute key trait, particularly with players who want to advance to the high levels of football, whether it's VFL or AFL. But also, that's where the fun is, isn't it, for players? Majority of them are very competitive players. So when you do drills that involve competition, it just sparks everyone up, and it's amazing how much more energy, enthusiasm you get from your group when you do that. I want to talk a bit
Absolutely.
about as your development coach, and as you spoke about, you're only 24 years old, which is you're really going really well at that age. Can you talk to me a little bit about some maybe key principles that you might be building that sort of guide your coaching for more better and consistent performance with your team and players you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think touching on the basic fundamentals is really important. The more you can add them into your training, the better those skills get attached to the players. So I think that's really important in a coaching aspect. Um, no different to including a routine and structure around everything you do within the club and within your program. I think unless you're at an elite level at AFL, everybody is working or studying or doing whatever they do in their day-to-day lives, and then they come in post that to footy training. So I think that if you can set that clear routine, and communication comes into this piece as well. If you can communicate that structure that is going to be your program for the week or for the month, it just allows players to plan and make sure that they make themselves available and can go in with ease of mind, knowing what they've got coming up. And I think that if they can plan from a playing perspective and training perspective, and that's no different to staff, if they can plan and prepare from that perspective early on, then it just makes sure that everyone's available, everyone's got a peace of mind, and it therefore, allows everyone to train, play better. And I think probably another thing to that is, from a coaching perspective, make sure you're utilizing your staff. I think at times we can go, as a coach, we want to shoulder the load and feel like we need to do everything. You employ staff or you have staff as part of your program for a reason. So make sure you're using them and keeping them involved, because more hands on deck makes for lighter work and ultimately a smoother run training session, and then a smoother run game day as well.
Yeah, I absolutely totally agree with that. Giving using your assistants and development coaches around you as a head coach, and yeah, like I think Paul Corrigan down here at the Falcons does that really well, and it allows the coaches to gives an idea what he wants to see, maybe a certain kicking drill or a contest drill or forward entry drill, and then lets the coaches go about creating that, which has been really good. And I know last year when we worked with Matthew Buck there at the under-16s, who's now the senior coach of the Carlton AFLW team, he was very similar. I think he gave us good rein to do bits and pieces throughout the sessions too, which as a coach I think is really good for your development. And I think even if you're coaching at youth level, local football or even junior football, I think you definitely use the assistants around you, and I think it builds that engagement too, doesn't it, with assistants who are working with you, whether you're coaching the under-14s or the reserves team, the local reserves team, or whatever it is. It's definitely important to maximize what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think every coach has a different voice or can provide a different voice as well. And from a playing perspective, some players may build a better relationship or feel more comfortable with a certain coach in terms of talking and adapting their game. So I think that's where assistants really become and development coaches really become most valuable to the team to be able to add that extra voice and extra perspective from a relationship point of view for the playing group to maximise their output.
Changing lanes a little bit here. In the AFL world and AFL coaches out there, is there anyone that really resonates with you and feel like you really admire from afar, and why is that?
Yeah, there's a few. I love Craig McRae. I love what he does. I love the energy that he builds and the positivity that just obviously I haven't spent any time in a program with him, but just listening to him do media interviews, and I know you've had him on the podcast, but just the positivity that he brings, the energy and the passion to coaching, the passion for footy. And I can only imagine how that then, correlates into the way that he is around the club, and it clearly shows with the way that Collingwood have gone this season. They just have so much fun when they're playing, and I think that at times coaches, players, staff, everyone can get caught up. Supporters can get caught up with the stresses of footy and trying to be too serious, but I think that he really brings the fun aspect back into it, and you can see that the boys at Collingwood just absolutely love playing footy, and no doubt he's a massive part of that. I think the other one that I love watching Matthew Nicks, or love what he does. I think he's been able to get a young group up and coming, and obviously they missed out on finals in a stiff way. But I can only imagine that they're going to continue to progress over the coming years with him at the helm. And probably the third one from an AFL perspective is Damien Hardwick. I just think everybody knows the success that he's been able to have. But going back to that 2017 year of being able to bind that group together, bring in people externally and look at coaching and playing from a different point of view and really drive that cultural aspect of being part of the footy club. I think they're really important and something that I've really enjoyed reading about or watching from afar. But at the same time, you can take bits and pieces, rightly or wrongly, from any coach to use and not use. And I think that's the beauty of the sport that we all love watching and being a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for listeners, we did have Craig McRae on episode 23. If you haven't checked that out, it was really great to sit down with him. And to your point about making a fun environment that he sort of created there, I think I had a post the other day. I popped up that Brenton Sanderson, when he was on this show, said, don't take yourself too seriously in this football space. And it's a good reminder, isn't it? I think we get so competitive and want the best for our players and want them to improve. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and have a bit of fun. And I know there's definitely something I need to keep working on, because I get pretty focused, zero in on, do this better, do that better, work here, we can improve here, but just having a bit of fun and a bit of a joke sometimes is magnificent. And you do see that with good performance with like the mighty Magpies at the moment, who are top of the table and going beautifully. So I want to move on to across your journey. Has there been, and there might be a current player that you're coaching, is there a player that really has exceeded your expectations, and by that it's sort of gone above what people thought they could do as a player and achieve more? And if there is, how do they go about that?
Yeah, probably this year, especially getting into the more senior aspect of my coaching. I think when I walked in the door at Werribee, and I give a shout out to Bjorn Mallowell is the player that I'm talking about. Um, he's a Sudanese boy that plays down at Werribee. And I think if you came and looked at him, he's an incredibly talented athlete. Um, he's a skinny fella. And I think that over his journey, people kind of put that down as he wouldn't be able to make it and wouldn't be able to cut it with the rigors of the AFL landscape or the bigger bodies in VFL world as well. And from what I've heard, it was Choco Williams when he spent time down at Werribee that really saw the potential that Bior had, and he's an incredibly talented athlete aerobically, especially. And he really found that as his weapon and coached at it as his weapon. Choco did. And that's just continued right from when Mix jumped in as well. We love having Bior as part of the program, and he's just continued to develop. He uses his aerobic skills as his real weapon, as his strength. He's got incredible speed, great agility, and he's really worked hard at his basic fundamentals skill-wise. And he's a really important player to our team this year and has been previously as well. So he's someone that's really exceeded my expectations from when I started in the program, and can only expect that he'll continue to develop in the coming years as well.
Fantastic. And just for listeners, and a lot of listeners will know this and have heard these terms before, but when you talk about weapon and, building their game around their strength, a player's strength, what does that mean? And how can that sort of translate to other coaches sort of listening? How do you go about that sort of accentuating someone's strength as a player, and really building off that?
Yeah, I think to start with, you've got to find what that strength is, and that comes down to the communication and relationship piece as coaches to be able to talk to your players and find out what they think that their strength is. And I think coaches can quite often get caught up in finding a lot of weaknesses in players and feeling like they need to improve too many aspects of the game and almost lose sight of coaching around what their team or their individual players' strengths are. So, someone might be really talented with their speed. So let's coach that and let's celebrate that and put them in a position or part of the game style that brings that to the forefront and allows that to be a real weapon to your team. If someone's really strong in a contest, celebrate that and put them in a position where they can really excel and contribute to the team in that aspect. Just getting caught up on what we need to improve all the time can be quite downing on players, I think, if they're given too many. So find those points that they need to improve on, 1, 2, 3, if there are, and work really hard to bring them up to a level that is that's at a good level to not get left behind. But then if they've got a strength, really continue to work hard on that so that it gets even better into a level where they're one of the best and really excel above others.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, mate. I really love that, how you mentioned about celebrating what they can do really well. And it's so important. And there's so many players in the AFL who have a strength. And if you focused on their weaknesses, they wouldn't be much good. Like, it comes to mind like a contested beast, like a Ben Cunnington. Like, if you focused on purely his running ability, you probably wouldn't get too excited by him as a player. But if you just focus on his contested stuff, he's elite and made a 10 plus year career. So for coaches listening, and I'm sure a lot of would have heard of this sort of coaching style, but I think it's really important. I think even junior level too, just building up, and that's what we're doing under 15s, under 16s. We're recruiting and developing players based on a weapon or a strength that they have, and identifying that, like you said, whether it's their ability to cover the ground or speed or contest strength or aerial strength or kicking, or decision making. I think there's a lot of strengths we can look at, and to put together a really successful team, you've got to have a lot of different strengths, don't you? You've got to have the outside guys, you've got to have the inside guys, you've got to have guys in lockdown, guys who can be creative up forward, guys with good kickers.
Absolutely, and that takes time as well to find that strength as a player, and especially at a junior level. People might think that, or we see players that are dominant midfielders at a junior level, and as they progress and try to forge themselves into representative and talent pathway programs and going forward, there becomes lots of midfielders or lots of players that are strong around a contest. But I think that players can have multiple strengths, and there's a message to junior coaches is make sure that we're continuing to expose players to multiple positions, because they might find that there's that strength outside of what their natural game is, and then you can go to work on that one, and all of a sudden they have strength A, and then from playing in or being exposed to a different position as well, they develop skill B that, number one, allows them to play multiple positions, and number two, if they are in that talent pathway program, it can lead to them becoming more draftable. And I'm sure that that's something that you guys are talking about in your talent pathway program from under 15 level all the way through to under 18 level, and something that we still talk about at state league level, to see that there's plenty of players that could progress to the next level from there as well.
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting, isn't it? Like, you can speak more than me, but I remember we had Doc or Daniel O'Keefe on the show, and obviously last year was with the Carlton Footy Club as their senior VFL coach, and and talked about it is still a development league a bit, isn't it? The VFL in a way for the AFL. They're trying to get players who can step up to the elite level. But there's no doubt through where I'm at, it is the case. And I think you're absolutely spot on. I think if you're a junior coach listing, whether you're doing under 10s, under 14s, 16s, you've got to play your players in multiple positions. You just can't have your best player sitting in midfield 24/7. It's just key to their development. They've got to have more strings to their bow than just be midfielder. And when we pick squads, especially down here in the Geelong region, it's we're looking for a whole different traits. So we can't have 20 midfielders in a squad of 30. We've got to have key forwards, key backs, small forwards, wingers, just the whole lot. So without a doubt, if you're not doing that as a coach, then that's something you need to probably rectify as soon as possible from my point of view. It's just on common coaching mistakes. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you might point out to coaches that, hey, this might be something to try and stay away from?
Yeah, I think I've certainly made plenty of coaching mistakes, and
We all have,
no doubt
yep.
everybody makes plenty of mistakes. I think first and foremost, I love to rephrase personally coaching mistakes to coaching learning opportunities, and I think that's that's in anything that you do. A mistake becomes a learning opportunity. From a coaching perspective, we've spoken about one of them already, which was just forgetting to have a laugh with your playing group and take that seriousness out of football 24/7. I know from being at Werribee, we start every pre-game with some form of joke or some form of humour, which really just breaks the ice before we straighten up and get into the serious aspect of what lies ahead for the day. And so that's something that I've really taken away and would use again in my coaching progressing forward.
Can I just
Yeah,
jump in there? Just can you walk me through the mechanics of that? So you're in the change rooms pre-game, and then let's say it's going to be probably. I'm assuming you're going to do it this weekend for a big qualifying final. So is there a person who's being designated? Is there assistant coach who's got designated to do the joke, or is it a player, or how does that function? Just for those listening.
no, Mick's very creative. He loves having the keynote slides and stitched a few boys up throughout the and staff. No one's left behind. Everyone's everyone's in a position to be stitched up if he doesn't miss too much. But yeah, no, we're just kind of in the change rooms pre-game, and there's always something to kickstart the pre-game meeting. And then, like I said, it's straightened up pretty quickly and into the business aspect of the day. But that's been something that's always really good, just to keep the positive vibes around the group for the day, and probably calms the nerves of a lot of players. And I'm sure there's a lot of coaches that do it. It just calms that level of seriousness and nerves for the day. So, but back to your question around common coaching mistakes, I think that just probably in today's day and age, coaches can maybe overcomplicate messages to players. And at the same time give them too much feedback. I think that there's nowhere to hide these days in footy. There's behind the goals vision, there's side-on vision, there's stats. There's so many things that are there for coaches to utilise. And I think that for coaches that have the time to sit down and scroll through all those pieces of information, I can only imagine it to be nerving for a player coming in, knowing that coaches have access to all of those different aspects of vision and analysis points. But I just think that to make sure that you're honing in on the real necessities, not giving too much. And when we talk about feedback or messaging to players, with the number of staff that we have as well, whoever's coaching has some messages that you might need to just relay to an individual player. It might be about something that's important in the contest around a clearance. It's not necessary for the whole club or the whole playing group to know all the time. That might just be the line coach's role to relay that to the mids, or it might be something specific about the ruck from the opposition. So let's just use that opportunity to talk and give individual feedback to the ruck, rather than sitting there and giving the whole team 15 points of information. Let's just clear, concise 3 to 5 points that we're focusing on as a team, and then we separate from there and add specific line or individual focuses clearly to each player.
Perfect, mate. Do you on game day, do you have any set routine for yourself as a coach, or is just pretty much rock up a game day and you have all your stuff organised and away you go?
Yeah, well, I think most of the magic happens during the week.
Yep.
You review your game from the previous weekend, you analyze the vision, you look at the statistics and where you're ranked against opposition, and then that's only very brief. I think we turn our attention pretty quickly to what lies ahead for the coming week, and we attack that head on at training and preview. So Thursday or Tuesday and Thursday we have line meetings. So Tuesday is our review from the week previous, and then Thursday is the preview to the coming match, and we have vision attached to that as well. And then on game day, like I said, most of the work's already done, but it's come in. We have our pre-game meeting. We have our warm-up, we have our line discussions, and then we're into the game. So it's a very set routine. I think that works. Again, coming back to that point about nerves and calming those nerves, it can be quite a tense environment. So the more that you apply that routine and take those nerving opportunities away to make players calm, I think it just ultimately leads for a more successful team environment and workplace environment. So yeah, that's a little bit about our week.
Perfect, mate. I think it's spot on. I think the old story was of, Vince Lombardi. I know he's obviously the head coach, but they joked that he was the most useless man on the field come game day because all his work was done during the week, getting the old Green Bay Packers back in the 1960s prepared. And obviously they were the greatest team of all time, pretty much back in those days. But it is a bit like that. I think a lot of the work is getting done during the week and going, game day, Saturday, Sunday prepared, and then you're only just doing bits and pieces. And I think the reality is on game day, and you remember as a player, like there's only so much you take in, isn't it? And it's just like you got a lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety. You want to really perform well, and there's only so much like you can really absorb. I think on game day, and I think that's a good reminder as coaches. Definitely, if in doubt, shorten it down. Less is best on match day for sure. Do you have any favorite drills that you like to run? Maybe particularly you said about the fundamentals pre-training. Is there any couple that you could share that you feel get good engagement from your players and good results?
Yeah, well, we're obviously lucky with the resources that we have at VFL level, but everything that we do pre-training, really basic, is translatable to community. We do a great drill that we give a funky name to of kicking a bubble, but essentially it's just pairs kicking with different varieties in pairs, one footy, and the coach is giving different points of whether it's, push back off the mark and kick, or it's roll the ball away from you, turn around and locate your partner and kick to them. That's a really simple one, but we just keep that energy up. We get the rebound nets out and do clean hands with the rebound nets, or you're doing groups of 3 clean hands, pairs handball, aerial contest work, whether it be at ground level or aerial, with bump bags, and players are just charging through the bag and focusing on taking the ball cleanly. So they're all little drills that are just great, but there's lots of different resources in terms of bump bags, pool noodles, different varieties of balls, whether you use, bouncing balls that bounce in different angles, or tennis balls, round balls, smaller footies. I think you can add lots of variety to the simplest of drills to make them A, and B, a bit more engaging and exciting for the players.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Couldn't agree more. And even the other day, I was doing some drills, and I was having the players, they're just doing some sort of footwork kicking, and we're just sort of back and forth through cones, a bit of the kicking range, so we'll call it. But then I had them kicking like little check side, 15-meter check sides, little 15-meter snaps, and I think it's just really good to it's good for the fun and engagement, but 2, it's really good for just developing those different ball skills and ability to connect from hand to foot. I think all those type of small tennis balls that you mentioned, round balls, all those things are really good. And then like if you're doing it at VFL levels, there's no doubt it's important. And I think after AFL level they're doing similar stuff. So don't be afraid. I think the last one I had them finishing on was a little 15-meter torpedo, which was testing a few of the boys out. So hey, it's just a bit of fun, and she's still getting good skill development in that pre-training phase of fundamentals. So a couple ideas there for listeners. Couple of final questions for you there, mate. And thank you, coming on this show and giving us your time. Do you have any books or documentaries that you might share with us that you reckon were worth looking at?
Yeah, I think listening to previous episodes, a lot of coaches have touched on the books that are built around, culture and a bit more philosophical from a coaching aspect. One book that I really enjoyed reading um, is called Yellow and Black, and it was the author spent time immersed in the Richmond inside the four walls of the Richmond Footy Club during 2017, and unknowingly that they were going to win the flag, and each chapter takes on a different perspective of someone in the club. So there's a chapter about being sitting in a pre-game meeting or a pre-training meeting, and there's a chapter about Trent Cotchin. There's a chapter about Peggy O'Neill, Brendan Gale. So it was a really great book to read just to get a perspective of all the different aspects and departments that go on within a footy club and the makeup of a footy club. And it became an even better book knowing that the success that they had that year. Um, Documentaries, really enjoyed watching The Last Dance. I'm sure plenty of people have watched that and followed that one. I'm actually doing the Next Coach program coaching course at the time, and each week that we came in, we had to give a recap on the episode and the learnings out of the episode. But I think that series really highlighted probably how times have changed around professionalism as such, or what players are doing outside of the four walls of the club, but just the serious talent that group had, and what went into the makeup of that club, and how basketball coaching and the drills are so translatable to football and a lot of the different game styles in different sports, not just basketball, but you kind of look at other sports and you go, wow, you can really take those aspects of coaching into an AFL perspective that we kind of hone our focus in on. And the final one, probably outside of those two, I love listening to podcasts, and obviously listen a lot to the Footy Coach podcast, Jock. So there's some great learnings from there. But I think the other one that I really enjoy listening to is called The Flying Coach with Steve Kerr and Pete Carroll from the NBA and NFL. And for listeners that want to tune to that one, there's some really great episodes around coaching, around leadership, around culture, and really enjoyed, listening to that when time allows. So yeah, there are a couple of things that I've tuned into and really enjoyed and taking some learnings out of.
Awesome, mate. Final question that I get all guests to answer. If I gave you a banner that you could put up on every coach's door that they're going to see day in, day out, what would you have written on that banner?
The one that I'd have written on, there's two actually. One would be on the coach's door, one would be in the change rooms for the players to see. So the coach's door would be everyone I meet is in some way my superior, William Shakespeare. I think that when you go into a footy club, there's so many different people or really it's in anything in life, but we'll talk from a footy perspective. There's so many different people in the club, analysts, recruiters, line coaches, high performance staff. As a coach, you don't know all of those different aspects to the level that those guys do. So I think have those conversations, and take learnings and develop yourself. There's always an opportunity to develop yourself and someone that knows that space a little bit better than you. So I'd certainly have that one up. And then the one that'd be around the change rooms is a quote from John Wooden, which is much can be accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. And I think that when we talk about role players and everyone having a role to play, take the individual focus out of it for a moment, strip it back and understand that ideally teams want to have a team first attitude and a team first focus. And what you're asked to do as a player, if you go in with that mantra and that attitude of getting the best out of yourself for the team, doesn't matter what you're asked to do, jump on board and do it for no doubt a reason at the end of the day. So I'd certainly have that one up as well.
Love it. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show, sharing us your thoughts on football, and really appreciate your time. Good luck for this weekend. Hopefully, you guys have a good finals campaign. This is coming into future listeners. This is coming into the 2023 finals. Mind you, the years do stack up on this podcast pretty quick. So good luck for that, and look forward to catching up down the track.
No worries, Jock. Thanks very much for having me. Love the work that you're doing.